Thanks for joining us during this session as we talk about what independent practice can look like with our iPad users. So hopefully at the end of this session, we'll have gained an understanding, a better understanding of this hybrid model of instruction that we're using right now, as well as get some strategies on how to conduct independent practice with your students who are in class, along with the remote students who are at home. So first, let's talk a little bit more about that hybrid learning. So we have seen a couple of different hybrid situations with A/B day students, along with your Hoke Online students. But when we're saying hybrid in this model, we're talking about having those students who are face to face and your online students attend a part of class, have either the learning and activities at some part be synchronous and then some part of that be asynchronous. So again, your students at home and your students in class attend a part of your lesson together at the same time. And that way the learning can be linear instead of repetitive, meaning that instead of your A/B day students, so you teach a lesson on Monday and then you reteach that lesson to your kids who are in class with you on Tuesday. We'd rather it be a new component being added to that lesson every day. So by having, let's say, direct instruction be synchronous, you can then have your kids in class and at home together with you during that direct instruction each day so that learning can continue to build off of each other each day. And so we've tried to model that for you guys over a couple of Friday sessions as we dove into the standard 3.MD1 on telling and writing time. So you saw Nicole and Shauna as they modeled direct instruction on this standard, and you heard them say things like zoomies and roomies when they were talking to kids online and the kids in class, and they had prompts on their screen so that each of those kids knew what to do. So those are some fun protocols that you guys can put inside your lessons, so that kids just know, like in the instructions or when you're talking to them, it's very clear when you're saying zoomies and roomies what they're supposed to do. And then at the end of direct instruction, the students would be released to do independent practice. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today with our iPad users. But then remember, Jake and Sam demonstrated how you could still have small group guided practice that can happen alongside of what your kids working by themselves. So again, direct instruction, I release my kids to work, and while they're working alone, I can pull groups and work with them, and get a little bit more one-on-one time or small group time in there. So if you want to go check out any of those strategies, make sure you check out this bit.ly.diff.tv and it takes you to our YouTube channel where you can see all of those past sessions and get some strategies for each of those. So let's dive a little bit more into independent practice. Remember, this is with our pre-K1 students. We're going to talk about iPads today, but independent practice, regardless of the grade level, is essentially when we're asking students to work with little to no assistance. So this is not with the teacher, this is more by themselves. And the reason that's important is because kids will either have a chance to reinforce skills that they already know at that moment, or they can put their new knowledge to work. So you're asking them to complete a task or series of tasks on their own, and it allows you to see where they're missing something and where they're making mistakes. And that feedback that you give them, that's where the learning occurs as they're correcting those mistakes. So it's important that this happens on their own for you to see where they're missing some of those skills that you want them to have. So independent practice can happen different ways, but in the way that we're modeling it, it happens at the end. It happened at the end of whole group direct instruction. And while kids are working alone, the teacher is pulling small groups as well. So that's how we've modeled it in this series that we're doing. So with your kids in class and students at home, it's very important to have all of your content, instructions, and assignments posted within your LMS. And for you guys, that is SeeSaw. So you want your kids in class and at home all to have access to that inside your learning management system. And that's really important so that when kids are going to complete that independent practice, if I'm struggling with something, I can refer back to the content, or I can go check the instructions if I forgot what you said. So it's very important for both sets of those students to have all of that information posted inside of SeeSaw. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about how Jamp School can help manage all this scenario with your hybrid learners. So let's dive in. And first, we're going to talk a little bit about how SeeSaw can help you guys. And we've reached out to Miss Laura at McLaughlin, and we're super thankful for her allowing us to show you some of the things that she does inside of her class. So we're going to look at how SeeSaw can be used to share content, instructions, and assignments with your students so all of them can be successful. And especially remember, the goal is when they're having independent practice. So when they're working by themselves, how can they be successful, especially when they're not in the classroom with you guys? So the first thing that she did, she clearly communicates her expectations, and she does this here with an image that she's posted inside of SeeSaw. So it's very easy for her students to see, like Zooming at 8:30 today. It's very easy to see what we're doing in math and literacy or in spelling. I know we're practicing 2-letter and 3-letter S blends. So it's very clear to see what the goals, what we're doing today by this image that she's put in there. So think about how you can use images or the tools inside of SeeSaw to clearly communicate what you want your kids to do today. Another way that we like that she was utilizing SeeSaw is she sends announcements, and you can use announcements for a variety of things. But what's nice about this is that it can be shared with students, parents, or both. So any type of info or materials that you want to make sure that students don't miss out on, consider posting it as an announcement instead of an activity. And so the same tools that are available for assignments are also available with your announcements. So you can remember, you can send it to parents, students, or both. You can type in your information, what you want them to do with it there, and then all the attachments. So when you click add attachments, you see all those same tools, whether you want the picture like you saw Laura posted, you can do a video, you can add a slide deck here. So a lot of options on what you can include in those announcements because all of those tools are still available there. And one thing that Laura puts in her announcements is content. So you see here, she's got a math slide deck where they were working on properties of addition. So it was really cool that she posted this as an announcement so that students can refer back to this as they're working through their activities for that day.
So when she sends her students off to do that independent math, whatever it is, they can go into their messages and they can find this content where they can refer back to help them with their work. So it's always easy to put that content where they're able to get to it. So I thought this was a really great way. Laura, do you have anything? Do you want to share about how that works for you? I don't mean to put you on the
Um,
spot.
oh no, you're fine. So the agenda I usually send in the announcements because they know to go to their assignments and complete their assignments, but sometimes I think we all know, especially with first grade and kindergartners, that sometimes they'll just go and push the check mark and then be like, what gingerbread man assignment are you talking about? So this just kind of gives parents a list of these are the assignments that your child was supposed to complete today. And also I used the little fun picture because that was, um, before we were virtual, and so it kind of gave them the little feel of the classroom. And the younger kids do better with the picture instead of just words. But then I also usually would post things in just words for the parents. The slide deck is with the A and B day, and it's if they missed. I'm sorry, the slide deck was from when we were all virtual, and so if they missed a lesson, I wanted to make sure that they had something to go back to when they're working with their child to help them complete assignments, that they can see the strategies that we're teaching in class. Because when we were doing like distributing items, parents were trying to teach them to use like the division sign and stuff. And I was like, no. So this was just so they could see how we're teaching things in class when they're not coming to Zoom.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's like I said, I was when we were putting this presentation together, I went and looked in some SeeSaw classes, and then when I looked at Laura's, I was like, I'm not going to make create something. I'm just going to use hers. This is really great. So thank you so much for allowing us to do that and sharing your experiences. And anybody else out there, if you have something as we go through, feel free to throw it in the chat and we'll bring it up, or we can bring you guys in to talk. We just don't want to keep you here for 2 hours if we get into deep of a conversation before we get through all of our content today. But so anyway, so in that announcement, like Laura said, the students, you teach them to know that's where they can find, you know, those activities, that not activities, but that's where they can find content. That's where they can find schedules, where to be one of those W's. They can find that there. I think that's a great thing. It's a great strategy for them. Okay, and so again, and where they find that, you just have to teach them those things are in your inbox and under messages, not in the activities. Okay. And so when you're creating activities, another thing for independent practice that you really need to get into the habit of, if you don't do, is making sure that you have a naming protocol that's going to make it really easy for your students to know that this is the activity I'm supposed to be working on today. So you can see in this activity, she's got Wednesday, February 3rd. So if I'm not in Zoom and she's not there to answer my question right now, it's easy for me to see when I go into my activities that this is the activity I'm working on today. If you just pop those activities up without putting that date in there, students and parents may not be sure exactly what it is they need to be working on. So I think that is a really great practice to get started with, and also making sure that your instructions are clear and complete, because you can see too, SeeSaw makes it very easy for you to be able to do a voice recording of the instructions. So that they can read it, they can hear it, and like I said, and then go back and read it, make sure does it make sense to you? Because like I said, the whole idea of independent is that you can let them go on their own, not have to have them on Zoom, and that they're actually able to complete this activity. And they may have a little bit of productive struggle. Shannon's actually going to talk about some strategies about that once we get finished going through the 2 tools, but we don't want it to be too much of a struggle because of the instructions. So really put some time into those directions. And you might even want to, before you let them go, make sure you explain the purpose. Here's why we're doing this. Here's an example of it. You know, show those types of things. Your Zoomies, you may want to keep them, let your roomies go and start working. Your Zoomies, keep them for a few extra minutes. Talk about it, see if they got any questions before you release them, though, to make sure that those they understand what they're doing and that the instructions are clear.
Can I add something about the instructions?
Yes, ma'am.
So for the instructions, we always do like the word and picture instructions, and then we add visual instruction, or not visual, I'm sorry, the audio instructions. But something we've been doing more recently is we also, on the first slide, if it's a little bit of a more complex activity, when you do a student template or whatever, so you can duplicate the assignment for 2 slides. And on the first one, we will record ourselves. And when you record your voice, you can also write on the screen. So we will record ourselves writing on the screen and giving an example so that's a little bit more clear and they see exactly where am I supposed to be writing, what am I supposed to be circling. And on a few things, you can post a video, because sometimes it's just like seeing your face and seeing you hold up your iPad and be like, this is the button that you're pushing right here, gives them that extra scaffolding that they might need depending on how complex the activity is.
All right, awesome. I love that. All right, move on to the next. Okay, so something that you might be doing for independent practice is you may be having the students working with apps. And so there's a few things that you can do to assist with apps being part of your independent practice. One is that maybe adding into those instructions the login directions. You would hope by now that they know how to get in iStation or that they know how to get into Reading Horizons, but you wouldn't believe how many calls that we get at our office because they can't get logged in. and we're kind of like, you've been in school since, and sometimes the apps glitch up. We know that too, and parents are struggling. But the more information you can have there within SeeSaw to help parents with that would make that independent practice go really smoothly. And there's some documents that I'm going to show you in Jamf that we can add into Jamf if that's something that you guys would like me to do, that are those login instructions. It's a document we can put right into their Jamf student account so that they can always refer back to that. And I think that would probably be really helpful, but don't let me get ahead of myself into Jamf. So, but as you're working in apps, making sure they know how to log in, making sure they know, what the app is, what they're using. You can do screenshots and pictures and things like that into your SeeSaw assignment. And also giving them something to do to be accountable. And it could be something as simple as this. Laura's got a circle yes or no if you did your Clubhouse, your reading assignment. So they're just coming in and documenting for her. Yes, I did the work in the app. You also could have them do a screenshot and upload it into SeeSaw of what they did in the app. You could also have them do a reflection of their learning. What did they learn? They could do a voice recording, they could do a video, but just some type of assignment if it's part of their independent practice, so that you have I don't want to exactly call it a product, but you have documentation that they actually did that work during independent practice. Because a lot of our content is shared, will be shared within the apps too. So it's just really important that they're able to actually document and get to the work that they need to do.
And doing it this way too, it adds it as an assignment, like on their activities list in SeeSaw. So instead of me just saying, okay, go and do Clubhouse, and then they say, well, oh, I forgot about it, it actually shows up as an assignment in their activity list. And as far as the logins, we have these login cards that we made for each child that has it has their ID number, and then next to each app, it has their login and password for every single app. And I share it with them as student work on their SeeSaw. So when they open it, they know to find it in their journal. I have to share it with them every couple of weeks though, because then it gets kind of far down. But also they have a printed copy in their pencil box here at school. And I did figure out that actually if I take their iPad and take a screenshot of it, it's easier for them to go into their pictures and find it than scrolling forever in their SeeSaw journal. But that is what we've been doing for that as far as keeping their logins together. And I can share that with Karen if anyone wants a template for that.
Awesome. Laura, does each child have an individual card, or is it one card?
Yes, every single one is individual. So like this one says that child's name, it has their ID number, and then it has all of their individual ones, and it shows them what the app button looks like so they know which button they're pushing, and their individual password and username.
That is awesome. I love that. All right. Well, Laura, I'm so glad you came.
If you guys saw, Ms. Lewis also added in the chat that that could be pinned to the top of their thread, Laura. So you might not have to keep as it goes down adding that. Great teamwork, guys. I love you. Thanks for sharing.
Yep, absolutely. That's awesome. Okay, and anybody else, please throw ideas in the chat, things that you guys are doing. We love that. It helps us for sure. I wanted to also talk about low-tech and no-tech activities that you might want to assign to your students as independent practice. I love this. I think this probably was your PE teacher that did this, an obstacle course, but I thought, well, how fun was that for the kids at your Zoomies at home to build this thing and take a picture. But then I got to thinking, the roomies, this might not have been as easy of an assignment for them to do. So it's like that with everything that we do. As far as we in digital, we encourage you to do some low tech, no tech activities, because the kids spend so much time on screen. And especially I was a kindergarten teacher before I became a media coordinator, and so my heart is there with pre-K, K. I worked in all those areas, and the idea of them not having those manipulatives and those blocks and the hands-on experiences and writing with a pencil and all of that, that is near and dear to me, that we need to be sure we're still doing those things too. And so when we're talking about this hybrid environment, we can do, we may be at school with our kids that are in class using counters. Your kids at home, maybe they don't have those counters, but they've probably got a bag of dry beans in the cabinet, or they've got some pennies they can use or whatever. So you just got to make that clear to parents. We're going to be doing this manipulative activity. Here's what we're going to be using in class, but here's a common item that maybe you have at home that you'll be able to use to do this, to simulate the activity. Also, that might be something that they could print on paper and cut out. You might want to make some kind of manipulatives that way that they use, that they can print. And is it flexible? Like this obstacle course, you can see that was a way open-ended activity that you could use just about anything. So if I am asking them to do something that I can't provide to them using the technology, am I giving them some options of what to do with that? Like here's what you can do at home, or maybe it's something like this. It's easy to do it at home, but now what am I going to do with my kids that are here with me at school? But just making sure both sets can get the experience that way. Okay. And then, as Laura said, I really like to, with the independent practices, teaching your kids about that calendar that is in SeeSaw. They can easily teach them to go look at that calendar, because then I can see all the activities that I have for that day, and know that I'm in the right place. So those are some tips for SeeSaw. Shanna or Laura, do you have anything else that you want to include while I pull up the JAMP information?
I think you ladies nailed it.
Alrighty. All right, I'm gonna stop my share for just 1 second and let me go grab that other document, because I have lost it somehow or another. I love online PD when this kind of stuff happens. Y'all know something happened when I opened my Zoom. I lost all my tabs, Shanna, that were open all at one time. So there it is. Okay, I got it now. All right, so let me share my screen again. Here we go. It's going to do it again. I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing wrong there with that, but there we go. Okay. All right. So, so this is a tool you may not know as much about. Like I said, I had a few people go through the course. I offered the PD a few times in the fall, and I probably had about 10 maybe people sign up. And then I think I have had 13 people go through the online Canvas course, which doesn't take, it might take you an hour, maybe a little bit more, to get through it. You do get 0.3 CEUs if you want to do that though. But about using JAMP Teacher. And the reason that we don't turn this one on without you taking the course is because JAMP is a little different than Apple Classroom. Some of you may be familiar with Apple Classroom and using that to manage the iPads in the class. I love Apple Classroom. Apple Classroom though works with Bluetooth. That means that you have to be in proximity. Your teacher iPad has to be in proximity with your student iPads to be able to manage them. JAMP Teacher, on the other hand, is not that way. JAMP Teacher, it doesn't matter. You could be in another country and you can manage your kids' iPads. You can take them over and do what you need to do. So therefore, we want to be absolutely sure that you know the power of JAMP Teacher before we actually turn that on with your students. And it works simultaneously with Apple Classroom. If you're doing a hybrid, you're going to want to use JAMP Teacher. If you got kids in class, you can go back and forth with which one you want to use. They do a couple of different things, but they're both awesome. One thing JAMP Teacher does not do that Apple Classroom does is it does not give you that ability to see what your kids screen. If you're familiar with Apple Classroom, you can pull up your student's device and you can see exactly what they're working on. JAMP Teacher does not do that because the devices are at home and they feel like you're getting into a little bit of a privacy thing there. So JAMP does not see the screen, but you can see that they're on. You can manage the iPad, but you can't actually pull up that student screen. So that's one of the main differences. But JAMP Teacher also has some other cool functions that I'm going to show you. So one thing JAMP Teacher has is it has a lesson feature. So now you got your lesson in SeeSaw for independent practice. You know what you want your kids to do there. So what JAMP Teacher will allow you to do is go and create all all the things you want the kid to be able to do on that iPad or not do on that iPad for a certain amount of time, and it'll allow you to lock them down. And all you have to do is just turn that lesson on. So you can see I've started a lesson. Now on my, if I was on my iPad, this screenshot you're seeing actually came from my MacBook, because once you have your teacher credentials, you can manage those iPads from your teacher iPad, but you can also manage from other devices as well. So this is me creating a lesson from my Mac. I wasn't on my my teacher iPad, but I did my little time lesson that I wanted to do, and I said, well, let me think about it. Named it, gave it a date, like we said, the protocol, and gave it the name. And then I said, well, what do my kids need? Do I really want them to be on? I don't want them to be on YouTube. I don't want them to be playing in this app over here that I don't want them in right now. I do need them to be able to get into SeeSaw. I do need them to be able to get into Zoom, because I may need to call them back. I might have that math app, one of the Math Learning Center apps that we have, the time clock app here. Now you can only add apps that you have. Okay, so if your students don't have that app on their iPad right now, you can't add it here. You can only, so keep that in mind. If it's a new app that you need, you got to request that and get the app put on, so that you can do it. But when you do this, what it does is all the other apps on their iPad are going to disappear. They will not see anything for the amount of time you set it for, except the apps that you select here. Okay, you can also do the same thing with websites. If you've got a particular website you want them to go to, you can lock them into a website on Safari. Okay, and you see here where it says lock in Safari. You can force them into that. You also, down here at the bottom, though, one of the great things is maybe I don't want them on Safari during this time. I want them in Epic. I want them in, Reading Horizons for the next 30 minutes. I don't want to give them any options. You can come down to these toggles at the bottom, and you can turn off the internet. You can turn it off. They will not be able to get to it until you tell them until you turn it off for them, or the time runs out, because you'll see there's a timer on it. This, like I said, this one looks a little different. I did it from my MacBook. I actually, the lesson feature on your iPad has a few more options than what you're seeing right here. But you see this button, allow use of Safari, down at the bottom. It's on right now, so that means that these kids would be able to get to Safari if they wanted to. But if I toggled that off, Safari would not work for them. I can turn the camera on and off. I can turn the ability to do screenshots on and off. Some of these things, like App Store, they don't have that access anyway. But this gives you a lot of control over what they can do. Okay, and like I said, it has a time feature. So I would go in, set up my class, set up my lesson. Okay, I want them to be in this lesson for 45 minutes. Start the lesson. All your kids, for the next 45 minutes, they're only going to be able to do what you allow them to do in that lesson feature. Okay. Another thing that's really helpful with Jamf Teacher is you can set up your remote class, and when you go into your settings, you put your Zoom link in. And so when you need to call kids back, let's say during that independent practice time, you wanted to do a small group instruction, all you have to do is go in, set this up. You see down here, I've got my technology test students that I was using. You check the students that you want. Your whole class would show up down at the bottom. I check the students I want to call, hit start. It's going to send them that link to your Zoom, and all they have to do is hit accept, and they're in your class. No code, they don't need to know your room name, nothing. It's going to just push that straight to their iPad. Now, it doesn't push them straight into Zoom. Let me say that. They still do have to accept it. It won't just turn Zoom on for them. But it's it's a blue button pops up right in the middle of their screen that says, do you want to join Zoom? And all they have to do is hit it, and then they're in your Zoom class. So I think when you start, if you're fearful of, if I let them off of Zoom to go do independent practice, I will never get them back, this is a great tool to know. You will be able to pull them back with this. Okay, another feature that Jamf Teacher has is, well, there's two features here. The messages are just what they say. It's like a chat. Unfortunately, it does not have like voice to text. So they actually would have to be able to type in there. So I'm not exactly sure how much you would use that, but it is there, and you do control those conversations. They can be one-way conversations from you to the student, from you to your class, kind of similar. You have something similar to that in SeeSaw. So you may use SeeSaw more for this type of thing than you'll use Jamp, but it is there. You can set up groups too of kids to talk. And like I said, you always can see the conversation, and you have total control of that conversation. Who can be in the group? Kids cannot set this up themselves. They can only be in conversations that you initiate. The other feature though that I do think you will use, especially for your Zoomies, is this raise hand. So you've got them in independent practice. You're off Zoom now. They're at home. They're doing what they need to do. They need your help. They can hit this on their Jamp student app, raise their hand, and it's going to alert you on your Jamp teacher that they have a question for you. So then you can push out that Zoom link to them, or whatever you need to do to be able to engage them because of them having the question. So all of that being said about Jamp Teacher, I could do a whole PD on just Jamp Teacher, but what we really wanted to talk about were the strategies to make independent practice successful for you. So if this Jamp Teacher seems like something that you want to have added on to your teacher iPad to be able to use with your students, like I said, there's a quick Canvas course. We're going to give you the link. It's actually in our Canvas course that you're in now, but I'm getting ready to stop sharing my screen so that Shanna can pull that back up. After we go through the lab, you can sign up for that Jamp course, and within a day or so after you sign up, your class will be set up and you'll be ready to roll with Jamp Teacher.
Okay, guys.
Shanna, did you want to do the?
Yeah, the oh.
Yeah.
You guys hear me okay? I got an internet stable message. You guys hearing me and seeing my screen okay now?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. And I've also thrown that, if you haven't gone through that Jamf course yet, I put that enroll link. If you click that, it'll take you to self-enroll so you guys can get started. So I hope you have started to see a little bit of picture of how SeeSaw and just some things like your clear instructions or your naming protocols can help with that independent practice, but that tagged on with Jamf can just help with that management a little bit. So that monitoring of your online students. I mean, I love Apple Classroom for the kids that are with you, but I hope you see the power of, if you can create that lesson in Jamf School and click your apps or whatever your kids will need and lock them into that, that'll help a little bit of that management. Like, so that sends them a SeeSaw and just kind of limits what they can do on their iPad specific to what you need them to do during that time. And then that calling them back. I mean, that's been a fear. I mean, I'm sure with kindergarten and first grade, with them maybe not knowing how to tell time yet when to come back home on. So that being able to call your Zoomies back in with you, or even like she said, that raise hand. So I'm at home and I'm struggling. I raised my hand, and then of course communicate with your students that I've got kids in class and other students, so I will get to you. But you can see that, like, maybe Shanna has a question. I've raised my hand at home, so then I could call that student back in with me if you needed to give a little support. So Jamp School, super helpful. I've got that enrollment code in the chat if you guys are interested in taking that to get that turned on. So Jamp School, and then your lesson design can really help your students learn independent practice. So those clear instructions for roomies and Zoomies, how SeeSaw has it where you can add video or things to model, add your voice reading those instructions and those icons, really help your kids as they try to figure out what to do. And then also in SeeSaw, I've seen two different things. So, if the way you post it, like if I post I want them to do this assignment first, second, third, I either have to post that an opposite way in SeeSaw or teach my students to start from the bottom up. So just that kind of communication and teaching them how to navigate those. And then how Laura used her, like taught the kids to go to the calendar. So when you add your assignment dates, they can go to their calendar and see, I've got 2 assignments today, 3 assignments, or using your announcements. Don't think you have to do all of those things. Just think about, okay, what will be easiest for my students, and then teach your students how to do those things. So that's your lesson or assignment design. And then those protocols. So for your remote students, I don't know, like she said about the Jamf, the message or raise hand, like your first grade students may be able to type out some messages, but that raising their hand just so you know to call them back can be super helpful. but we also know that like that can get overwhelming. When I have students in class and I've got kids at home raising their hand, like we just thought about like even when we were mimicking that, we can see like you kind of sometimes feel like I see they're raising their hand, I see it in the chat, like it can get to be a lot. So one thing we're really encouraging, a lady at Rockfish shared with us, and I think Karen mentioned it. After I do my whole group, I'm going to let my kids in class go ahead and start, and I'm going to take my device to my small group, and I'm just going to stay on a few more minutes with my Zoomies and make sure they can find what they need and they don't have any questions. So she almost starts a little small group with her Zoomies before she releases them. So we thought that was a great way to end the whole group lesson with them before you release them. And then also giving students, sorry, they're all highlighted, 10 to 15 minutes to work alone. So that independent practice, that productive struggle is going to help them, and it's going to help you really see where they're making the mistakes. So 10 minutes to really think through what they're doing, to really synthesize and use those skills, and to find out where they're missing to be able to complete that. So 10 to 15 minutes to do independent practice before you allow them to raise their hand and ask questions. Like read your instructions, think for a moment, work through. It's just nice to teach those students how to do that before you allow them to come back to you with using JAMF or in class to raise their hand. And then lastly, you saw some ways that they can submit things that aren't digital. We really encourage you guys to have hands-on things to submit. So whether that's in class or at home, they can do things on paper and still take that picture and submit. So you guys have been doing that in SeeSaw for a long time. That's a little bit new with our Canvas users, but we also said that you could also, like if you have something posted digital, but for your in-class kids, I can give them something hands-on. You can still do that and collect that hands-on work. So let's say I still take a picture of it and submit it in SeeSaw for accountability. But when I look at that student's work, I really may want to go pull that hard copy. So you can do any type of combinations of these things that help you and your students. So make sure you have got that JAMP teacher course if you're interested in getting that turned on for you and your students. And we're going to stop now. And any questions or concerns, like as you've heard this or as you've been putting things in practice, feel free to unmute yourself or throw things in the chat, and we'll talk through some of those.
And let me put a plug in too for JAMP is a suite. So you've got JAMP student, they have an app, JAMP teacher, you have an app. There's also a JAMP parent app. And we did one of our Parent Connect sessions on it, but we didn't have a lot of attendance. But that video is on our YouTube channel. I believe I'm not sure if it's that link that we listed or not, but it's called JAMP Parent. And JAMP Teacher turns off at 2:30. So the kids can't raise their hand to you at 10 o'clock at night. They can't be asking you questions then at 2:30. I think it's 2:30 where it said their day ends there. And that can be adjusted a little if somebody would need that to be done. But what that does is at that point, JAMP Parent turns on. So let's say that you've got a student that at 10:30 they've got their iPad in their bed hiding under the covers on their iPad at night, and the parent doesn't want them on the internet at night. That parent has similar controls that you do when it's not school hours. They can lock that. They know that they're supposed to be reading for 2 hours, or well, that's a long time for littles, but reading for 30 minutes tonight. So that parent can lock their own child into Epic for 30 minutes. So that's all they can do with the iPad, or they can have that. They can make bedtime at 8:30 and turn the internet off of the iPad, and it won't turn back on until school day starts. So that JAMP Parent is very powerful as well. So the two work together. So if that's something your parents, you'd be interested in us doing a session for parents, we would be happy to do that. Or they can go refer them to our YouTube channel. There's a form link. All they've got to do is fill out that after they watch it, fill out the link, and we can turn JAMP Parent on for them as well.
Yeah, that suite is really amazing for your control as teachers and parents. So check that out. Share that info with your parents. I just threw that in the chat as well. We've got Teacher Connect playlist and Parent Connect playlist. So please feel free to share that with your parents. Super helpful. And again, if you have any questions or concerns as you're thinking through things or have been implementing things, unmute or throw that in the chat, and we'll be glad to talk through that.
Stephanie, it's in Canvas. There's a link to that Canvas course up above. All you have to do is go there and the training is right there. And once you complete it, Jamp will be turned on for you. And if you need further support, okay, if you feel like you need more, do email me. Kay Nichols is my email address. Email me here and I will set something up to work with you on Jamp Teacher.
Well, that wraps up our Friday Connect. So if you have any questions or concerns, please stay on. And if not, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Oh, and Laura, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
helping us out today.
you.
You know, awesome.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
I have a question about JAMP. When you activate it, like if I do the course and you activate it, would you be able to give me another teacher's student as well? We have a teacher who left, so we won't have a teacher in that classroom for the remainder of the school year. So I teach her students virtually.
It's whoever you guys tell me to put on your roster. That's who I put on there. They can't be in two classes though. Like if two people try to control the iPads through Jamp Teacher, it gets really conflicted. So if you're going to be the one who controls the iPad, that you just send me that name and that's who I'll put in your roster.
Okay, thank you.
And then as new students come, just so in case people wonder how do kids end up in your roster after we set up the schedule, your media coordinator, when they assign the iPad to your new students, that's how I know to put them in your class in Jamp.
Okay,
But if
perfect.
there's
Thank you.
anything different, then you just shoot me an email and I can move it in just a few seconds.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question.
I'm sorry. I have
Okay.
a question. I'm sorry. Thank you. Did I miss something? I'm just sorry. For CUs, how do we get our credits for this?
You just need to do our NISA's code. Go in. There is a NISA's code somewhere. Shannon, still on? Oh,
Okay.
it is. Okay, she popped in the chat. Yep, just join in the NISA's code.
And make sure to throw your
Okay. So you
your
got
name,
okay.
put your
me
name
get-
in the chat if you haven't done that yet. Name and where you work and your position as well.
Did you have questions?
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
I have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just enrolled into the Jamp Teacher. So when I finish that course, will you guys put my kids in or will I have to put my kids in?
We'll put them in.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you. I think I see you talking, but I'm not able to hear you. Try that. Try your microphone one more time. Try pulling your microphone, pulling that out of your computer and putting it back in and see if it'll reconnect it.
Let's see.
Well, I
Can
think
you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, without the headphones. Okay. So, what I say that I don't have an account for the school. I'm doing ESL, and occasionally I see some of the students like 2 days a week. So I didn't really ask for an account for me to school, and I have used forever the free account. If I use the free account, the students can access easily with all the JOM, or I have to have a school account.
You can have a school account though, anyway, if you would like one. You're talking about SeeSaw. You want the
Yes, SeeSaw. Yeah.
What it'll do, all we do is we'll enroll you in SeeSaw for Schools, and it'll just pull your stuff that you've already created. It'll pull it in, and then you'll have all the added features of SeeSaw.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't SeeSaw for Schools. The district doesn't pay for it by the teacher, it's by the student. So you're using the same students that are already paid for. The
Yeah.
only thing is that if you do have older children, it is not, you can't bring them over into your SeeSaw for Schools. It needs to be just your pre-K, K1 or EC kids. If you
Okay. Yeah.
SeeSaw for any of your older children, you'll need to pull them out before we quit.
Yeah, I have only 4 kindergarteners, and so that's why I was using kind of the free account. But I think with all these beauty things, I don't know if I would like to use it because it's a lot easier with them.
Yeah, no, the
Absolutely.
SeeSaw for Schools, you can put multiple slides. You can do, there's a lot of things with SeeSaw for Schools. Like I said,
Yeah.
your name. What school are you at?
Hawkeye Elementary.
At which elementary? Say that again.
Hawkeye.
Hawkeye. Okay. You'll get an invitation to SeeSaw for Schools as soon as we finish this.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Bye
welcome.
bye. Thank you.
Is it just
That's
us?
it. I think that's it.
Are we done recording? Turn recording off.
Where's that at?
It's at
I'm
the
sorry.
top.
There it is. Sorry, I couldn't find my bars.